So tell me about Math Philosophy Club. Math Philosophy Club is not the name of what you went to, but close enough.
Oh, it's close enough, yeah. I think that's what it will be like. I think they're in and among the sort of
That's how
wider
it's supposed to sound.
group of undergraduates who are taking this class. In some ways, some of them to feel superior to those who are not taking this class. There is a group of people who are clearly like on board, and that's Math Philosophy Club within Philosophy of Mathematics class. So we spent most of today talking about definitions. Oh, we started though, this is interesting. So we started by talking about what does philosophy hope to achieve, and in practice, what does philosophy achieve with respect to mathematics. And so the first thing we kind of talked about was philosophy in general hopes,
Have fun is on my list of objectives.
Oh, how fun!
This is the most wonderful game.
It's beautiful.
My internal power is low. How do I activate you? Do I pull these down? Do I pull them up? I'm still listening.
And so one of the things philosophy aims to do in general is sort of help thinkers reconceptualize ideas they've already had and systems of thinking they've already built up. And a lot of that can be as simple as a redefinition of terms. One of the examples he gave was the change in definition of planet that's happened over the past 25 years.
Has it changed? Has it changed?
He was using the example of the IIU changing their definition to exclude Pluto in response to the discovery of lots of trans-Neptunian objects of similar character. In some cases bigger than Pluto. So he didn't even mention the exoplanet discoveries, but obviously they play into that momentum. And so now what was once a planet is no longer a planet. That has changed how we think about planets and how we think about the solar system and the formation of solar systems in general. I don't think it's a stretch to say it's changed our conception of our place in the universe. The definition of planet, according to the IIU, is only one small facet of that thinking, but the whole thing has been a quite monumental shift.
I mean, we get this a lot, like telling someone that we work on planets. And it's kind of confusing for them for a while. Some people think that we kind of sold them a lie when it turns out they're planets outside of our solar system. They're almost like those aren't planets. Like, this podcast can be called Copernicize This. Yeah, it's my favourite boy. It's not. It's fine.
They use it to float.
Yeah.
That's very good.
But only for a certain amount of
I
time.
see. You lose those petals.
Gotta be gentle. Oh, I love his noises. Hang on.
And so, in the sort of ideal cases, that's what philosophy can do, is it can come in from the outside and spark a paradigm shift of one character or another.
Hmm.
And it relates to a lot of what we thought about in the past, about sort of distillation of earlier thinking, and how sloppy or incomplete or just sort of underbaked ideas can make their way into a field's self-conception and into a field's pedagogy. And often it takes a sort of fringe thinker or even a full outsider to sort of notice and correct those things.
I hate these rocks.
Push them!
I simply won't have them.
Simply will not take.
Get out of here!
Ow.
You're coming with me. I mean, I hate you.
No!
But you're coming with me.
No, we're friends now.
Okay.
Suitcase. Suitcase for Bud.
So that, for all that I see and complain about, faltering of science actually correcting its own blind spots, I guess whilst I know some philosophers see it as their goal to identify and fix those blind spots, maybe this is a very much view from someone who doesn't really know what modern philosophers do. But do they?
Well, that's the thing. At least in mathematics, the lecturer today was arguing that that's not what happens. And that's in part because mathematics is just a really difficult and abstruse subject to break into as an outsider. You really need to be trained within mathematics to understand. Oh, he's stuck. He and his 3 brothers are stuck in a rock cave.
I'll save
He and his
you.
brothers are stuck on an island and the tide is rising.
I love those guys.
I think about them all the time.
This is 3 sheep in Iceland on a very small island as the tide raises.
It was not an island probably 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
It is now an island.
Although it's almost not an island now, like it's too small. Like their feet may well be in the water, but they can still stand there.
And they are going to stand there until they simply cannot.
Are you free?
Such
Are
a
you
good
almost
shaft. Look at him. It's just good. It's just good.
free? You are actually now free.
No, I'm not. I'm not free.
Get out of here.
I was free the whole time.
Get out of here. Go, 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 go. Live your life. Some people have pushy parents who force them to do particular things. I'm not that. Yeah, go.
Where? Go where?
Don't worry about it.
Where?
Don't worry about it.
Are you uploading that sheep?
No. Who?
You really look like you're uploading that sheep.
I'm just scanning that sheep. He's fine. I'll be back in a bit, bud.
I'll take him out. Let him go.
He probably likes it.
He really likes it. But
Like, it's kind of the opposite of where he was before. He was surrounded by stuff and now he is free.
I think he just wants to be able to walk around. Though.
We do, just kind of force your Western values onto that sheet.
Yeah, that's true.
So, philosophy is almost a dirty word in not necessarily the world we work in, but the world that we were taught in, the undergraduate sciences.
And I think it's because of exactly this thing that's like that philosophers are seen as people who can't hack it in the science itself, and so attempt to come in and sort of explain it from the outside, but in a way that doesn't capture the full knowledge of it.
Yeah, and sometimes it really just feels like you're kind of like, and this is a really hard problem to get around, but you're kind of like, guys, do you know enough maths to do this?
Yeah.
Like, I really don't want to gatekeep it, but I have to. I don't want to gatekeep it, but otherwise your box will change size.
Yeah.
And something I realised a little while back was that the intersection of people who can Because to learn the maths you would need to be a really successful philosopher of science requires performing really well at maths. To even be in the classes you need to learn these things. Like, to start using the kind of maths that is building 21st century science, you need at least calculus, at least in the way it's taught. And that means that you've had to do maths at university, which in itself is just a really, really high bar. Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yes. Yeah. Strong. Bro.
Yeah, I'm gonna grow a big, strong guy. And so, if your eventual goal was to write a philosophical treatise on it, you still have to get through very demanding, quite slow, slightly librarian work, is maybe one way to put it.
And then if you do, I think you face a similar backlash from philosophers.
Alright, I'm going to do something really stupid here. Go. No! I'm fine, I have my umbrella.
That's very good.
Also, I think there's something down here.
Yeah.
I don't even mind about the one I didn't get. Come on.
Well, yeah, I think you can face a similar sort of problem being accepted by the philosophical community if you train as a mathematician or scientist.
Yeah.
You can be seen as someone who's sort of the stereotype of the physicist who swoops into a much different subject and attempts to sort of understand it as a simple physical system, which is often a really insufficient approach, even as it can be very enlightening. Like I think physicists quite rightly feel somewhat defensive about this, about being accused of swooping in that way.
Oh, but they love to.
They love to.
Even in physics, like I'm swooping in right now on
I know, but
something.
that's why I say the defensiveness is right. I think people in other fields don't get that joy and don't understand how informative it could be, and sort of default to the defensive posture of like, well, you're missing out on all of the really important complications, and it's like, yes, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
But you've got to start somewhere.
Something I say often to kind of put this in context is that physics is not the study of any particular thing. It doesn't. If you start looking at what's in a physics textbook, it doesn't fit together. It's not really one story. Like you're talking about pulleys and springs, but you're also talking about particles and galaxies. What unites them is a relatively shared vocabulary, but more than anything, a relatively uniform level of simplicity across the fields. Maybe not even at the heart of the fields. Like some of these, I could believe you could look at in a different way, such that they didn't seem like comparable or parsimonious kinds of simplicity. Sometimes it's just the person who worked on one went on to work on the other. Like anything Newton worked on will be called physics, regardless. In some ways, optics is a different kind of physics than.
Oh. Well, that brings me to two related points. The first being, because of this difficulty in talking to each other, philosophers of mathematics have historically latched on to questions in mathematics that resemble the ones that traditional philosophers work on. And the most obvious of those is like, what mathematical objects exist and in what sense do they exist? This is actually, I think, the only question I've been exposed to that's been labeled philosophy of mathematics in my training. And I do think it's fascinating. I would love to hear different perspectives on that. I don't think that's going to happen in this course because of the next thing I wanted to say, which is we touched briefly on the question of the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. Like, if mathematics is something that exists in the abstract world of ideas, first of all, how do we have access to that? And second, how does it relate to the sort of physical phenomena we're attempting to understand in the concrete world of objects? And so there's an essay of this title, The Unreasonable Effectiveness of Mathematics, by a person whose name I can't remember. But it's the one, I think I put it on the Slack channel, I reread it recently.
The Unbearable Fear of Virginia Woolf.
Yes. The Art of Motorcycle, Middlemarch.
Who's Afraid of Gilbert Grape?
Yes.
I actually don't know I don't know what Gilbert Grape is. It was a CD that hung around my house for a while in my youth, and so it's kind of cemented itself. Yeah, it was.
Gilbert Grape. I haven't seen it.
There was The Guardian gave it away free once, so it was in my house for years, and I never watched it. But it's stuck in my head.
It's a good title.
Yeah. Why do I want to teleport? I'm right where I want to be.
God.
Actually, I want to be over here.
Anyway, so you can sort of drive yourself crazy wondering about this. Or you can sort of answer the question by saying, well, mathematics is not itself any sort of unreasonably effective magic. Mathematics is just the art of reasoning very precisely and very rigorously. And so it's effective in the sense that it's just something done really well. And in fact, just better than other types of thinking. And I think there's some truth to that. The lecturer gave the example of there's objects that are sort of subjects of mathematical scrutiny now that historically were not. Knots being an example. And so knots have just sort of entered into the vocabulary and the definition system of mathematics in a way that allows this very rigorous and also very abstract reasoning about them. And sort of subjects them to these quote-unquote unreasonably effective conclusions in a way that a lot of empirical sciences just don't appear to allow. But that's just because mathematical reasoning is of that exact rigorous and abstract type.
I was trying to do something two complicated things at once there.
That's fair.
Can I hear that again?
Yeah, it's the idea that mathematics is effective because it's done both rigorously and abstractly. And that allows a type of conclusion drawing that other types of reasoning don't. Like you can generalize about mathematical objects. You can sort of allow variables to run over mathematical objects. Because you've defined them very rigorously and you know what objects you're talking about in a very specific sense. And other types of reasoning aren't like this. And there's a view you could take that mathematics will expand to encompass more and more types of objects in this way. And mathematics and the things it's able to describe will grow. And you'll be able to do mathematics about biological systems, for example, eventually. And then you'll be able to draw mathematical-like conclusions about those things. This is one viewpoint, of course. I mean, the biological systems thing wasn't something that was said in lecture. I'm just extrapolating.
Yeah.
But I think it's an interesting argument. And then we spent the rest of the class just talking about what rigor means, and it basically comes down to precision and definition. And we talked a little bit about how the sort of efforts that were made, particularly in the early 20th century, to ground mathematics in a foundation, might just be a sort of misguided instinct for rigor. It might be a misidentification of what rigor means. If you don't need to start from axioms that are sort of unquestionable to have mathematical rigor. You just need a very clear sense of what it is that you're talking about, what it is that you're reasoning about. And we spent most of the rest of class talking about definitions, and in particular about the distinction between objects that are, well, the distinction between intension and extension. Extension being a word I hadn't heard in this context before. And this was an example that was given to explain it was, compare the two sentences. Man is a rational animal, and man is a featherless biped. The first, we're identifying the word man with the definition, rational animal, in the sense that those two things have the same intention, the same meaning. But in the second, we're identifying man and featherless biped as two concepts that have the same imprint upon the world, the same sort of footprints
an intersection rather than a one being rather than an inequality, maybe.
Well, it gets a little hand wavy. I don't know if this is a contentious claim or not. I've been sort of going back and forth on it all day. But the
let's make some contentious claims.
Well, this is the lecturer's suggestion. He said one way to look at science, and I don't know if he's fully on board with this either. It's just something he was telling us is.
And also, as we've seen, I don't know what he said, but the maths world that we're in isn't quite a scientist world. Like we've seen some people say stuff in lectures recently where we're like, actually, you're not representing science very fairly here. Not naming names.
But yeah, the sort of the claim is that science and scientific progress are a sort of gradual transformation of intensive concepts to extensive ones. Like you start by look at all those beautiful festering molds. Molds.
Different.
Fungus.
Fungi.
Fungi for buds. Buds for guys.
Do I like water?
Yeah. You do not care.
I don't mind.
Simply do not mind.
I simply
do a little dance in it.
fell over, but I don't mind about that either. I fall over sometimes.
Fine.
It's not embarrassing. Hey sheep, do you want to be friends? No. Very much no. Can I have... I'll just take this.
Take. So I don't think I have a very clean example of this, but I think I can give a couple hints at it. Number one being that set theory is, again, this is something the lecturer said, set theory is the sort of attempt to extensionalize everything in mathematics, to enumerate it all. And, here's an example. We talked about the intensive versus the extensive understanding of a function. So, yeah, this gets real deep real quick.
I'm so in.
Yeah.
I hope you know that expression was like a, you must tell me about
this.
this.
No, this was great.
I'm going down here. It's important.
Oh, yeah.
I go down here.
This was great, and it was also kind of an exact conversation I was having with Jose and Mihir when I was last in New York. It was kind of remarkably the same.
Sometimes I think that they know everything already, those two.
I really think those two do. Like, Jose and Mihir should be doing this podcast.
Oh, yes.
Dopey. And so, so a function.
Give me this. I want it.
Take.
No, you're not. It's not actually possible to get it.
Ah,
This one, however,
take.
I missed.
Take. Can you get these?
Not everyone can, but a true professional like me also probably can't. This cave is rich in crystals. I say whilst prioritizing
Only flour.
So yeah, Jose and Mahir would be running a better podcast than we would, but if they were running that better podcast, what would they be saying?
We were talking in New York about how it took me a long time as a student of mathematics to understand a function as anything other than a graph on a page.
Yeah.
And in particular, it took me, I think probably until I started programming, to understand a function as something that transforms an input into an output. That is essentially an operator, a more or less complicated one, where you start from something and you perform some definite operation on it and you obtain a result. I didn't see functions as that sort of active concept. I had a very graphical, a very visual picture of them. That was, and I still find that extremely useful.
What I'll tend to go to first, but then sometimes I'll find myself stuck because it's too high dimensional to visualize, and I'll be like plotting cut throughs in my head, but often this is really unsatisfying to actually see or feel like you get the function.
Yeah, and I usually really want the visual picture. That's still sort of my primary
then I feel like
conceptualization.
I've got it.
Yeah.
Oh, then you have it.
Take. And so we were having this conversation, and we were all kind of in agreement that these are two quite distinct ways of thinking about this idea. What?
Mine.
Take.
Hey, Mr. Dodo, do you want to come with me?
Dodo.
Just come with me.
Yes.
Just come. We're just gonna go.
Very good, folks.
I'll come back for you. Others have now got a jetpack. Okay, without falling. Just gonna drop this down there. Come back for you, my friend. Oh, hello.
%21 crystals.
This is a relatively short game.
Are you trying to get up to 100% on that, or is 100% the maximum? Is like
yes.
Listen, I come from Hollow Knight, where actually like 112% is the maximum level of completion of the game. Are you about to drop this dodo over a waterfall?
No. It would be incredibly unfair to drop it.
Are you gonna float down with a dodo?
That would be much more fair, but I only got 2 pedals left for floating. So
you're gonna fall and then float yourself.
Yes! Ah. Everyone's okay!
Is everyone okay? Yeah, he's fine.
Well, it's pretty stupid looking, but...
Yeah, but, that's Dodo.
Dodo, we need to scan you. I mean, we don't. This is a completely optional extra in this game. I just like it when they float. He's just sticking like one leg on, like no. Okay. This seems okay.
Very Wallace and Gromit, the sort of eye animation.
Anyway, I'm gonna leave you behind, friend, because I gotta find the other plant I dropped down. You can finally fly.
So anyway, these are these two definitions of a function. You can map them quite simply onto these concepts of intensive and extensive. So the intensive understanding of a function, that is the understanding of it as a sort of object with a character.
Die, sheep.
No!
No, sheep are going to die, probably. It's actually quite underwhelming.
Is this picture of a function as something that takes an input and yields an output?
Oh, I don't think it does like water.
Oh.
And that's, wait, the take input to output version of a function, that is which one?
Intensive. It's the understanding of a function as something with a character. Or a soul, if you want to be sort of tongue-in-cheek. An individual object with an individual character.
Very risque.
Whereas a function as a graph is a sort of set of ordered pairs, even.
Would a way to put this be like the difference between thinking a spanner is the tool which achieves this task from a spanner is the thing which is this shape? Where one, its existence, the concept, stems from other things with concepts, and any other where it's kind of just.
I don't know. It's again, this distinction is somewhat hand-wavy, and I don't have a full understanding of it yet.
I think I'm stuck.
But it's not quite the same as saying what is something's purpose versus what is its. What is its form? You know, like that sort of feels like different Aristotelian versions of causation or something.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's related, but I don't think it's quite that. It's similar in that you can't understand a function fully without both of these definitions operating at the same time. You know, like you can't neglect one in favor of the other completely. They're both really useful in different contexts.
Well, you need the thing that transforms an input into an output to make the curve, to make the graph. But you don't need the graph to make the input into an output.
You don't.
So it seems that it's not necessarily you need both.
But I think if as a practicing thinker, you use both. You know, I think someone who only programs, I don't think we would call them a mathematician in this way. You know, like if you were just writing these functions in terms of code, there would be something fundamental that you're missing.
Yeah, although we know quite a lot of people who are, I don't know if we'd call them mathematicians, but are pushing that boundary.
Yeah, we do.
And I don't know if not calling them a mathematician might not be more pride and in some ways envy than a meaningful description of them and what they do.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Like, it's such a strong instinct to gatekeep rational thought. You're like, oh, it's not really gatekeeping because you're not showing that anyone can't do it. But we do like to say like, oh, but we're the chosen ones. We're the best ones.
But it is important in the sense that once you have a concept of a function extensively, or any object extensively, once you're sort of aware of its footprint on the world, to go back to the definition of the term, you can reason about it in ways that you can't if you're still thinking about individual functions of individual character, if you're still thinking about like the gamma function versus the hypergeometric function versus the tangent function.
Choose your fighter.
Choose your fighter. If you're thinking about functions generally, continuous functions, differentiable functions, you can start doing things like the squeeze theorem or the intermediate value theorem. Like, the individual character of the function doesn't matter anymore. They all behave in ways that you can reason about together.
Oh look, one of these got in there on its own accord.
And that's what, in some ways, getting back to this idea of scientific progress, that's in some ways what that is sort of enabling that higher level reasoning about categories of things, as opposed to just individual things.
Well, there's something that you've heard me say a lot recently, is that classification, when meaningful at all, is only meaningful in two circumstances that I can think of, which are phase transitions and overdensities. And even those, I think we should probably think of as separate. So I'm just kind of trying to put together this picture that we're solving some of the uncertainty and potential irrationality by changing understanding of something from intrinsic to extrinsic. That by classifying it and grouping it, we haven't necessarily...
Intensive to extensive. I might have been, sorry.
No, probably me. I'm still kind of getting my head around this concept, or arguably not getting my head around them. I don't really feel like I've latched onto anything.
Yeah. I mean, here's another example.
I'd love some more concrete examples. And then do some exercises if you can think of them, because I learned maths the old-fashioned way.
We talked about logical operators. And we talked about 3 different logical statements. If we have 2 propositions A and B, we talked about the statements A or B, A and B, A implies B. And we're wondering about, going back to this intensive versus extensive distinction, what does it mean for a proposition like A or B to be intended versus extended? The sort of the extension of a proposition is just its truth value. It's just the Boolean value, true or false.
So the extension is its value.
Yeah, it's like, what impact does this proposition have in our reasoning? Oh, well, it just boils down to its truth or falsehood. That's the role it's playing in our logic. But the intention of A or B is the thing that evaluates to true or false. Like, A is a stand-in for an idea that evaluates to true or false. And so that's the intention of A. And the extension is the thing it evaluates to.
Could I see this then as the extension is the Platonic ideal? Is that a fair reading? And the intention is the manifestation of that ideal, or even, depending on how you like to look at it, the thing that is not necessarily linked to the extensive property, but that you could infer from it.
I think it's related to that, yeah. I found this idea of a footprint in the world very useful. I mean, that's still what I'm thinking of for the extension.
Can you say that to me again?
This idea that if we're describing man as a featherless biped.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Lucky feathered biped, folks.
I forgot about him. No, he's not got any feathers. He's man. He's man. Oh man. He's a guy. Come
He's definitely a
down.
guy.
No, don't go back in. Come down.
I like it in here now. I float. I fly like my bird
Go
brothers.
back up later, but I'm worried that you can't get down.
Oh, wait, I'm bird. I fly.
There literally are birds on this planet. There's you and there's butterflies.
I'm bird. Versus man as a rational animal. Like, if you were out in the world just trying to evaluate things as you encountered them.
Did very well.
Yeah. The second would be much more useful to you, because that's sort of how it's operating in practice.
Because you don't much care for knowing, for being able to do a kind of quite specific classification of man.
Yeah, there's something about the rational animal definition. Again, it isn't stark. It's not a stark differentiation, and for different purposes, I think we can draw this boundary differently.
No.
Oh, I fling myself.
Gosh.
I celebrate myself. I fling myself. I celebrate myself. I fling myself.
Is that what you're trying to say?
There's a Walt Whitman line. I celebrate myself. I sing myself. So I'm just replacing the S sound with the flow sound.
Yeah, thank you. I think
It's
the
just
Walt
a
Whitman quote was a
good
bit of the joke that needed explaining.
Yes. Anyway, the sort of rational animal bit. I mean, it does reflect intention in the other sense of the word. Like, that is what I am trying to do. You know, it reflects a sort of inner meaning or inner purpose. That looking at it from the outside is sort of irrelevant for certain scientific discussions.
I think I agree that I can see how it... I think I can see the difference here. What I'm yet to understand is why is it a meaningful difference enough that we name it? Is it a functionally useful distinction to be made? Because that's what I often feel about philosophy compared to, not that they are opposite, they're two different, two totally different things, but my way of doing physical science is quite... A thing has its value if it's useful. And actually, more than that, physical science tends to have a thing has its value if it's never not useful, if it's never misleading. Even useful assumptions are slightly...
I mean, just getting back to this logic example.
Yes.
The statements, let's say, for example, that you have these propositions A and B. And you're interested in defining a logical system or inventing a logic to explain the relationships between these propositions. If you know the truth values of A and B, if you just know A is true, B is false, then you immediately know the truth values of A and B, and A or B.
Yeah.
So and or are logical operations that only rely on the extensive character of A and B. It doesn't really matter what A or B actually say, as long as we know what they evaluate to. But the statement A implies B is not like that. You can you can define a sort of Boolean operation to capture a certain sense of the word implies. To make sure that you don't violate the sort of basic rule, like what you want the word implies to mean in a very strict logical sense. You want it to prevent the situation where A is true, A implies B, and yet B is false.
Yeah.
So you can define the implies operation to mean not A and not B.
Yes.
Um,
And that seems pretty sound.
It is. But it does feel like meaning lost in some ways. Like you are no longer concerned with what A and B are. You are defining an extensive logic. And for mathematical logic, for symbolic logic, that's completely sufficient. That's what symbolic logic and mathematical logic are. You can't really define a symbolic or mathematical logic that relies on the intrinsic character, the intensive character of A and B. Apparently lots of people in the 19th century went crazy trying to do this, but it's not possible. And so you've sort of, by transforming into this extensive realm, you've sort of made a logic possible that wasn't before. And that is one way of understanding.
I don't care enough.
What science is concerned with doing in general. Does that make sense? Again, there's no like value judgment attached to intensive or extensive.
Yeah.
But
I don't feel concrete enough in what these things mean yet, which is fair. It's my first interaction with them.
I mean, neither do I. I learned about them earlier today.
And I'm still like just starting to get around what an intrinsic variable means, and more kind of amazed every time I do get a bit further in. I'm like, what? Why should who? Not that I'm saying that they're similar. They're just similar words, but you know, there's plenty of things that I'm still like a decade into knowing the word and kind of its definition without really having turned it into a concept that I feel in command of. I've always felt like was one of the slowest people at doing this of anyone around me. Which I've recently been like, yeah, it's fine. It takes me a while to get these, so I tend to, once I've actually got them, find them quite easy to use.
Yeah, so it's a new one. That's basically what we talked about. I think next week is meant to be about foundationalism, which is this project of trying to ground all of mathematics in sort of foundational axioms and then deduce from there. Which doesn't work for very solid reasons.
Baby!
But I think the professor was saying, like, I'm going to talk about why I think this is kind of a misguided project to begin with. And so I'm curious to see how that will go.
Yeah. And I will be there, and I will be able to report on whether or not I know what...
Also, you should read my notes, because they're going to be a slightly more coherent explanation of things I've talked about today.
Yeah, I'm not sure anything can...
Yeah.
Because you're kind of trying to take me through the experience of being you in this lecture.
Yeah.
So we're a few levels distinct from the intent of what was originally said. Teaching's hard, man.
Teaching's hard.
Climbing this
Mathematical
hill.
philosophy is cool as fuck, is my opinion.
So would you say?
I was having such a nice time thinking about these ideas today. It's just, even trying to explain them now, I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of getting a better handle on it. But it just, it's.
I'm really glad. I was worried that I'd be bugging you by not like.
Like I've never learned this before, let alone taught it before. I'm not gonna teach it perfectly.
Yeah, you're right. It'd be ridiculous to be upset about not doing that.
But yeah, it was a lot of very interesting sort of, like, yeah, this is kind of what I felt like I've been missing, is just space to sit and think about what it is that we're doing.
Mm.
And I have to have that space.
Thinking about in my kind of most paranoid phase of the last like years, I'm really interested in a picture of your online and your private life as being a thing you can apply a concept like sanitation to. That there are ways in which to be sanitary, to be safe and controlled and clean. And they all require work. They're a trade-off, but they're pretty incontrovertible. Like, yeah, you can do them, and they're less bad than the prospect of not doing them, not using them. And I think maybe there's a similar concept of like philosophical sanitation. Sanitation seems like a kind of
hygiene.
Yeah. That we don't really do as scientists.
No.
Like, we don't do the epistemological equivalent of cleaning our hands before making food. We just jump straight into it. And worse, this is a very soft we, as many people, the exception to this is the rule. Well, you know, some fraction of people, but it's certainly not completely general. We sometimes really don't want to do it. We really don't want to question the logical frameworks we use. I thought I know this. I'm Bud, and I am fearless. Let me just go down here.
You stunted.
Oh yeah, now I've got more rocket pack power. I can probably make it back to the island now. Yeah, I can probably make it.
Yeah.
I've used it all up.
Oh.
It's not critical. It'll be fine.
Anyway, a lot of this was also just, it felt like good. Oh!
It actually wasn't fine.
A lot of it felt like good advice for people who were trying to invent a subfield, which is kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like, just one thing that felt especially useful was just a nice statement of the fallacy of, oh god, what was it? I cannot remember what the fallacy is called, but it's the fallacy of leading yourself to an erroneous conclusion by quite sensibly and rigorously reasoning, but using inconsistent definitions throughout your argument. So, just a very simple example of this
Naturalistic fallacy?
No,
It's just a fallacy I learned about the other day.
No, I'm not going to remember the name of it.
Oh, you should make it up.
Vocab is gone.
Yeah, fair.
But a very simple example. All metals are elements. Bronze is a metal. Therefore, bronze is an element.
Yeah.
So it's just two different senses of the word metal that you've used without realizing that you've done a little switcheroo. The switcheroo fallacy. Let's call it that.
Just checking. Is it called that?
No. It's got a much more sensible or official name. But
no, I'm completely fine with it having a descriptive and non-threatening natural name. Shockingly, that's my jam.
Yeah. But yeah, it's the kind of thing to be quite careful about when you're first inventing a lot of vocabulary and deciding what it describes.
Yeah. And I meet, like, the person I had dinner with last night, who kind of wanted to argue every single thing said. I mean, so we had long discussions about the value of doing certain kinds of science and the ways in which we can know about Big Bang cosmology. And I got the feeling that this person had made this realization that a lot of people realise, which is that some things are hard or impossible to prove absolutely rationally. But other things are possible, and so things that are not provable that way, they don't really believe in. And I see people making these kind of fallacies all the time, where they seem to be growing off the picture of the neatness of the world. That comes from a reading of, let's say, physical sciences, but that actually isn't really borne out in it. And often the way they're getting there is playing a bit of mix and match with how two different concepts work and when they apply. And almost no one, for relatively good reason, is using things that look like the standard of proof for most sciences, including other sciences. This is a really difficult thing to get across to someone, like what is standard of proof in your science? It's just sort of a choice that you've all agreed on. Even if your standard of proof is absolute rigorousness, you can't prove that absolute rigorousness is the right choice of standard of proof. You can just choose it, and then, given that, use it that way. Come on, you can make it, you can make it.
Oh, I can't.
You can.
No,
I believe in you. No, you're almost there, you're almost there, you're almost there, you're almost there.
It's too far. I can't do it.
I didn't make it.
It's too far.
I'll never touch ground.
Oh, can you get it though? I want you to get it.
Oh yeah, I just want to see what's up here. Oh, it's carrots.
Carrots.
Carrots and mushrooms. Tasty stew.
Yeah, that
That's
sounds pretty nice.
my song. Yeah. Okay.
I think I am getting too sleepy to have much more in-depth philosophical conversation.
That's
But
alright.
I do want to see you stick this plant into all the energy rocks first before we go to bed.
Into all the energy rocks.
Yeah, aren't you at 4 out of 6 right
I am at 4 out of 6, but what do you reckon happens when I've done 4 out of 6?
I mean, I just want to do 6.
No!
Oh, don't fall.
Oh god. I don't think there's a way to make it back.
Oh.
I can make it over
You
here.
did it. Get yourself another flower.
I've got another flower. And
43% crystals, baby.
that's what they call me in high school. One day, someone who I went to secondary school with might watch this video and be like, we
did not call him 43% crystals, baby.
Yeah. Or worse, someone might watch it and be like, I don't remember calling him that, but he says we did. Did we? I can make it. Goodbye. Believe in you.
What else believe in him? You got more rocket power now, sure.
I think so, yeah. Anyway.
You made it.
Made.
You made it to the bouncy leaf.
if this one's any closer than the last one, so it might do exactly the same thing.
I don't know why this one feels closer.
I think it's going to make it.
You made it.
Oh, yeah.
You made it, folks. Oh, this plant is strang. Strang and hell.
Look, it's all the way up there.
Yeah. Strang and tall.
It moves its body like a cannonball. Fairly well. My God. Fairly well.
Oh, thanks, Mom.
I think she's saying the waterfall is remarkable, but
Yeah, no,
I
she
also-
did. I think it's nice that she's pointing it out. Too.
yeah, I think she's just really positive.
I do. I like our mom in this game.
Yeah.
I think often our mom in games is not very nice.
No, I think our mom is
This
always
mom-
nice. I think
no,
mom's always nice in games.
No, this mom is good. But like our mom in Portal wasn't very nice.
Oh, I think she was nice.
No, she's nice.
I've done it again. I don't even have any
No flower.
flower. I've probably got a little bit of jetpack,
no,
so let's.
no.
Yes.
Well done, guy. Shot.
Chat, you will not believe the places I've been. Let me tell you of. I've got you.
Oh, where do I go?
I've got you, and eventually I will have enough jetpack to lift you into the air, which you will love. Alright. Maybe we should call it a night there. I think I wore you out by not understanding.
No, it's good.
But I did not understand because you weren't explaining it well. I didn't understand it because it was hard.
It's hard. I'm not Grub. I'm just
Oh, maybe
tired.
I'm Bob because I feel stupid for not understanding it. Did you ever think of that?
Oh, I did think of that.
Oh.
You're not stupid for not understanding it. It's just 11 p.m. That's all.
Don't tell them. They'll work out where we live.
It's
not 11:11.
It's 11 p.m. somewhere always.
There's a lovely plot in a Map Boys, Map Men. Really, they're Map Boys.
Map boys, map boys, map boys.
Come at me, Map Men channel. I think you're boys.
I like the map men.
I like them a lot, but I think they are just boys with maps.
We're all just boys with maps.
I know. That's why I think they're that. Bod doesn't actually have a map, but he's pretty sure Mum knows where he's going.
Map.
The sheep has made its way back into the...
Yes.
The sheep's like, I didn't...
I swear there was a map. It comes up intermittently.
Yeah, it's in the thing. Sheep's looking at it.
Oh, I see. Oh, then Mom has a map.
Yeah. Obviously Mum has a map. I like that Mum named our teleportation devices after us. So we wouldn't get confused. Yeah, we'd know where they're supposed to go.
I like not being confused myself.
There's a lovely thing in one of their videos where they're talking about the railway blocks, and they show a not actual true graphic, but of time zones in Britain, and just having continuous gradients swiping across, and you're like, yeah, that is what time zones would look like then.
Yeah.
Time is weird, is my point, maybe. I
Good
don't know
point.
what the point is. It's 11:13 p.m. in
Do you know where
Oxford, Wales, France. I'm pretty sure we said the name of the city we live in multiple times. And also the courses we take.
Oh, whatever. Fine.
It's just life.